We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss right here at selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful guest from Toronto, Canada is Melissa De Silva. We're going to be talking about her books today. Poetry, some beautiful books here. Why did she write them? What, motivated her to write them? What is the importance of it? There's always a reason behind why we do things, and what is her reason, and what is she trying to have other people understand about it? Improve anxiety, therapy, relationships, self-help, dating, and all of that. And she has two poetry books on Amazon, The Last Kiss and Lose Me, and you've got a third book here too, so we'll have to discuss that as well. Welcome to the show, love. Always admire authors. I'm trying to be one myself. It is not an easy feat at all. But when it comes out of you, you have to set it free, don't you?
Yes. Anytime anything comes to my head, I write it down.
Yes.
Unless I forget it.
Right. You don't have the little recorder on your phone, because I think by the time I look for the recorder, it's out of my head.
It's true. I write on OneNotes. That way it can save and I can access it on my computer. I find that that's the best way. You can open it up quickly and write.
Yeah. Yes. Middle of the night, do you get the inspiration?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes if something comes to me, if I don't write it down, it's just forgotten. So
Yes.
I always try to write things down because sometimes it can inspire something else. So I just write any thoughts that I have sometimes, or if I have a scrap piece of paper, I'll write on a scrap too sometimes.
Yeah. That's what we call kind of being organic and letting it out, because, you're tapped in, you're tuned into something, you've picked up the frequency, and it gives you this beautiful nugget, and you really have to pay attention to it at the time. There was another author that she'd written children's books when she was young, but it was like, go and get a real job. And she went into marketing and everything else, and she's in a traffic jam one day, and the story comes pouring out of her, and she ran out of pieces of paper and started writing on her arm and on her hands, because it had to come out, because when it wants to come out, you have to let it free, right?
It's true. Yeah. I've been writing since I was 18, and I never really did anything with it until I was about 10 years later. So 28 is when I started asking myself, okay, what can I do with this? Because I didn't want to just let it sit.
Yeah, but we're told to conform, and sometimes it's just the universe giving us some life experience, so that when it does come to writing, we've got some background, to be part of the material. And sometimes it's that we've ignored the message and we've gone and done the dutiful thing, and then we realize it's the wrong path.
Yeah, I totally agree. I never thought that I would be a writer or how to do it. Thankfully now we have self-publishing, right? Because if I had to wait for a publisher to approach me, I would have never published a book. So thank God for self-publishing and that I could do it myself and put myself out there.
And, my brother is a professional author, and he's had publishers, but they're inclined to hold things up for years and then hijack the book. And not all publishers are like that. There's some really good independent ones. But if you're waiting for the traditional route, it's very competitive, and it's you still got to do the same amount of work. You still got to go to podcasts and do all the things to promote your book. So, I'm an advocate of self-publishing when you just want to get your expression out there.
I totally agree. And it was so much easier. I didn't have to wait for anybody. And I've been hearing more and more that self-publishing is a lot easier. That you're right. We still need to put in the work to advertise for our books. So you might as well just collect all the profits.
Yeah,
you're going to have to do that. What do they really add to this, but taking away from your profits, right?
Yes. And, there are some authentic ones out there. And so people that are really, this is their passion and they really do back an author. But there's, very often there's a huge waiting list, for those people. And, you've waited 10 years to get the writing out there, to set it free. So why hold it back any further?
Yeah, I just set it free and I published 3 books in about a span of 6 months.
Wow. Wow. And is each book differently, different content, or is it a flow of one into the other?
I wouldn't say that they're related. They're all kind of different. One is about a relationship I was in, one is more about love, and then one is about loss. So they're all fairly different, but if you read them, I guess you kind of get to know me.
Yes, and intertwine.
Yeah.
We write about kind of what we know. I mean, some of the writers, they can let their imagination go and go out into the stratosphere, but especially if you're writing poetry, it is, again, that life experience that's within you. And funny enough, I have another writer show on this week, which was actually a kind of a expressive writing workshop where he says to write to release trauma, a right to kind of set yourself free, whether you just write it for you or for someone else, and how writing is so therapeutic of a way of really looking at our traumas and really looking at our inner selves. And sometimes writing it and then reading it, it's like you're talking to a totally different person.
That's exactly how I felt. Like when I read back my stuff, I don't even feel like the same person. And sometimes I would have to like take things out because I'm like, no, that's not how it went. Like you were just very upset that day. But I'd always found writing very therapeutic. And that's how I think I started. It just was a way to get my feelings out. And then I turned it into a book.
I find that most authors that I interview is that once the writing starts, it's like the arm gets longer, it's got to keep writing. It's because you've opened up that door now, and a way to channel what it is that you need to say. Do you find it a lot easier with each book of what comes out?
I do find it easy because I just write and I don't write to self-publish. Sometimes I just write it because that's how I feel in the moment, or I just whatever comes to mind I write, and then I kind of see what I want to publish. Which is, I don't usually like filter myself because I feel like I'm a very straightforward person, which is why I chose poetry, because I feel like poetry just gets to the point.
Yeah.
I feel, when books kind of drag the storyline, like I just go directly to how I felt in the moment.
Yeah, my brother is an author and a fictional writer, which always parallels life. And, he's, a professor of literature too. So his is very laid out and very much that. And I'm in the midst of writing my book right now. And I can't write like that. I'm an article writer, a blogger, and it comes out and it has its voice and then it's done. And the thing is that, yes, there's been the traditional way of doing things, but you've really got to trust your own gut and your own process, and that it's okay to put things out differently than the status quo.
I agree with that. You have to be true to who you are and how you tell the story, right? If you try to drag it on, it might sound boring, but the way you write it's perfect, right? So I'm a true believer of doing things the way that you want to do them, even if it's
I mean, ultimately, exactly. Is there a wrong or right way? I mean, obviously, the spelling, the grammar, and the pacing, of the structure of the wording, the book cover, and all of those type of things that are important. And there's so many guidelines in order to do that today. As long as you kind of follow those particular guidelines, so that your book is going to be seen and easily read, the content that in there, this is your personal voice. And you're not going to speak to everyone. You're going to speak to the people who resonate with that voice, or maybe going through the same thing or have gone through the same thing. You're speaking to them and igniting something inside of them.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote my books. I wanted people to relate. I always liked reading poetry that I related to
Mhm.
in the time or the moment that I was going through the same thing. And I found it always very helpful to go through or know that somebody else was going through the
Yeah.
same thing. It's not just me. So that's why what inspired me to write my own books is that hopefully somebody will read it and be like, oh wow, like I felt what she felt, like I felt her. I love when people say I felt your words, like,
Yeah.
because you can't feel words, but they do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying when you read
Oh, you
it?
can feel words, and words have
Yeah.
such a massive impact. Even the negative words, every single
Hmm.
thing is a vibration, a frequency. And if we speak negatively to ourselves, which we all do at some point,
Hmm.
those negatives have an impact on our psyche. But if we speak positively to ourselves with love and with care and compassion, it changes the frequency to be something more productive for our own lives and opens up that creativity. So when you were expressing yourself and talking about things that you've been through, but what you've gained from it, because it's always what you've become now, right? That there's the benefit. You may have gone through this, but what are you now because of it?
I do have like a kind of progression in my book. Like I start off with the relationship and what I was going through, how
Mm-hmm.
I felt, and then it kind of comes to the climax of where we break up,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like me trying to reflecting and saying, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I had to find myself. I had to,
Yeah.
put myself first. I was very codependent in that relationship, and that's where I went wrong. But that was me having time to reflect on it, because during the relationship I would put the blame on my partner, and it, you know what I'm saying, we and I had faults in there too, but I had to take some time and reflect on what those faults were and where I went wrong.
Right. And it's you're going through the process. So, but that's the
Yeah.
thing is that, uh, you know, we get a lot out there that's angst, that's just the pain. And you may ignite that other pain, oh, I relate. But everybody wants to know, but how did you get through it?
Hmm.
Right. So they'll take that journey with you because they want to know how you got through it. What do I need to do to apply in my life to get through it? And that's the reason why they get so engrossed.
Hmm. I feel like that's where my poetry books stand out. I feel like poetry books in general just kind of talk about sad, and I tried to put a
Yeah.
kind of positive spin at the end, like, okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel, if you just kind of reflect, right? Everyone, I
Mm,
feel like you should kind of reflect on where you went wrong. I feel like it's so human to just blame other people. We don't
mm.
want to blame ourselves and take responsibility. um, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm always
Once I
saying,
did, it inspired my
right.
writing.
Yeah. And not only you read it, but it inspired you, right? I mean, we love pointing the finger, but there's three pointing back at us. And it's like, well, what was my part in this? What was my reaction in this? And what am I going to do about it? Because no blame, no shame. We're reacting to something in the moment based on what we know or how we feel. When we're willing to go through the process and then reflect back, we have a better understanding of why we took that path. And it now becomes an observation that you're not going to take that path again. Otherwise, you're
Exactly.
going to repeat that path over and over again.
For sure. For sure. And in a while, I was kind of repeating it. But then once you figure it out, right? Because to undo something, it takes like tremendous work. And I had to go to therapy and really just work on myself. And obviously, it's so easy to fall into old patterns. It's not easy, but I can tell everyone who's listening that it is worth it.
Yes, utterly, completely, totally worth it. And it's what your journey is about. We're so big on destinations, how many likes, how many this, how many followers. Everybody's looking for this perfection, which is an illusion. Break down imperfection. I am perfect as I am, right? But it's becoming that perfect image of self. And to always know that we're always growing. We're always going to stumble, and don't sit down there and go, why me, or why does it happen again? To go, okay, I understand where I tripped. It's about getting back up again. And life is about the journey. It's not about the destination. We have many destinations along the way, right? But it's about the journey, and we've got to be willing to take it.
I know, even though it's a hard path, and a
Mm,
lot of times, you resist and then it just
mm,
makes it worse. But what you said is right. Like, you just got to go through it, good or bad. You just have to accept it as it is. Life can't be perfect. If it was, like, it just wouldn't be fun. It would be kind of boring if you really think
Yes.
about it.
Oh, utterly boring. We are incredibly simple but complex creatures. And, simply what we're looking for is to love and be loved, to count and know that we're contributing and we're seen and heard in this world. How we go about it is that there's always a lot of influence on the outside that we buy into, and we don't listen enough to the inside. And if we listen to the inside, we would make a lot of pauses and not a lot of choices that we have made. So sometimes that reflection and reading back and looking back at, yeah, I understand why I made that move. I understand why I felt that way. But I don't have to feel that way anymore. How I feel about me is my choice. What I do with it from here is my choice. And other people can influence, but you don't want people to push you in a path that you're not ready for.
I agree. I have a rule now that I don't listen to anybody. I don't care what anybody says about me or about anything. I'm like, don't, because sometimes, when people say things, you start, oh, am I like this? Oh, and I don't allow it. I just say, no, that's not true. Or, if it's true, then I accept it. But if I'm like, that's
Yes.
not how, I don't feel like that's right to me, then I just try not to accept it into my life.
And you don't have to justify, do you? As long as you know your truth, you don't need to verify or justify or defend.
Exactly, because sometimes people are just projecting how they feel.
Yes.
Right. So I've learned that from lessons of people, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then they're talking like how I used to talk. They're saying, oh yeah, like, and it's like, you told me that was wrong years ago.
Yes.
So now I just don't listen to anybody, because we're all on our own journey, learning, right? All in different steps of our journey, and I just don't take what anybody says anymore.
Which book came first?
It was Lose Me.
And is that because you felt lost yourself? You had lost yourself in your own life?
Yeah, I felt like I lost myself in that relationship. Like, I was so caught up on the other person that I just completely forgot about myself and wasn't thinking about what are my needs, because I was so trying to fulfill his that I wasn't filling my needs.
Know that one. Yes. It's like, as long as I take care of them, they'll notice me. And you know this adage of, well, you're not the woman I married. Well, no, we're meant to grow. Right? We are meant to grow. But I have this beautiful picture of man and woman, and then as the face comes together, it forms one face. So the one face is the us of us, right? But unless the two individuals are strong, how can the us be complete? Right? You complete me? No, complement me. Complement me. That doesn't mean praise. That means that we suit each other, we complement each other, because we recognize each other's individuality and the strengths. So we know how to bring the us together. But we're trained by society to please our partner at the cost of oneself.
I know, it's so true. And I was in that relationship, I was trying to like change the other person, which I should not have been doing, because I wouldn't want that done to me.
Exactly.
It just made things completely worse. And that's one of the lessons that I took away from that.
Yeah. And put it in the book, which now becomes that aha moment for other people, that reflection for other people, that when reading it, it's like, oh, I'm doing the same thing and I didn't know it.
Yeah, I hope that it inspires at least somebody to, kind of even self-reflect on, their relationship, and if they feel the same way. They might not feel the same way that I felt, but it might get them to think.
To start reflecting on what their relationship is. And why it is, I think there is a need for us to be in relationships as identification, where how can we have a strong relationship if we don't have a strong self?
Yeah, and I feel like I never had the time to really figure out myself Once I went to therapy and once I started with like my self-help and listening to podcasts and being able to figure out myself, I had a better grounding of who I was. And then that's what, I had time to reflect, and I was like, this is not the relationship for me.
Right, right. And that very often when you're talking in the mirror, this is not the relationship for me. It's actually talking to yourself, saying the relationship you have with yourself is not for you, because the relationship you have with someone else is just a projection of how you see yourself.
Ooh, that's a good one.
But you trying to change him is you trying to change something within you.
Yeah, which I was, and I did for the better. I changed myself for the better. So,
but it had to be a solo journey, right?
For sure, it definitely had to be a solo journey.
I mean, nobody, people can encourage you on the journey, they can support you, but they can't walk it for you. You've got to be willing to do that yourself.
Yeah, you have. So true. I have to do it myself, and I did, and I'm
Right.
happy. I'm happy, but no one. You're right. No one helped me through that. It was me, and that I had the willingness to actually change and figure out, oh, what's wrong? Because I always felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, oh my God, there's this. It was like such a heavy feeling in my heart.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, I don't know what this is. Is it love? I thought it was love.
Yes, yes.
But then after like going to therapy, and it was like, no, it was just trauma.
And we do attach the two together. And, very often looking for someone to love us is someone to try to validate why somebody else, a trauma didn't love us. We're trying to justify, we're trying to verify somebody loves me, and whether it's the right love or not, or for the right reasons or not, as long as they love me, I'll put up with everything else. And then that love always turns sour because it's not truth.
Yeah, and I'm honestly grateful for the experience, because it got me to where I am today. So I honestly have no regrets.
This is the common thread for every show that I do. The people who are willing to take the journey go through the process of their own self-discovery. They go, it doesn't matter what happened to me. I'm looking at happened for me to discover my strength, my courage, my abilities. And because I was willing to go through the process, I now love the person I am today. That's
exactly. And there's up and downs in that journey, right? You slip up. And I think the biggest thing is to, number one, learn to forgive yourself for mistakes that you've made in the past, and just carry on, just continue on with your journey, because you'll get there eventually. It took me, like, I would say, a couple of years, and sometimes I still have moments that I fall, but I can cope with it a lot better, because I know how to talk to myself.
Right. You have the skills now. And, a lot of people think, oh, it's come back. No, it isn't. Just a situation has brought about, either triggered, or you've put yourself in the same situation, maybe out of habit, but you know better now. You know what to do now to get out of that situation. So don't panic.
And I find that, at least with me, I found that I was like going through the same thing and observing myself doing it, knowing that I was doing it, but I just sat there and just observed. I got out a little earlier, but I just found that funny. I'm like, I know I'm doing the same thing, but
And sometimes it's like when you're falling, you've tripped and you're falling and you've just got to fall. There is no defense. But it is like, okay, I understand why I fell, but I also know how to get back up.
I'm somebody, I need to fail to learn. I don't know what it is. That's just how I learn, and I've just accepted that.
Yes. No, but that is all of it. And I'd actually never consider that failure. It's just lessons learned. You had to fall to learn how to get back up. I look upon failure as those that fall and cry about it and refuse to get back up. They want to be the victim, because in being the victim, they get the attention, whether it be the right attention or not, they get attention. And they're unwilling to get back up and help heal themselves. And I consider that a personal failure, because you've given in to the trauma and you've gone into the drama. But just to fall and go, oops, on my ass again. You know how to get back up again. And that, to me, is just a life lesson and good for you.
I used to just fall and play victim too. So I've been on both spectrums.
I think we've all been there because it did get us attention. People did feel sorry for us. But then we realized that they only feel sorry for a short period of time and then they don't care.
Yeah, and then they're just like, I'm tired of your drama here.
Exactly. Yes. And
you're doing this to yourself at this point. Yeah.
We can become our own soap opera if we're not careful. And, there's only so much that people can take. Everybody's dealing with their own stuff. And there's only so much they can take of what you're going through. And of course, attitude, especially attitude of gratitude, is huge in any form of recovery or of what realizing oneself.
Yeah, I have a gratitude journal where I write what I'm thankful for because it keeps me positive. I notice if I don't write in it, like I feel very down or I can have very sad days. But I think like, repeating, writing what you're grateful for helps you like stay positive and be gracious.
I think stay present too. Because if it's just as simply, I'm, grateful for the rain today because it's watering the flowers and making everything green and providing the food for me. And you can go on and on and on what the rain is doing for you. And I think it's a reset to ground you and to show you that there is so much to be grateful for, that it's really hard to feed what we felt ungrateful for before. Exactly. Because, positive attitude is something that you pay attention, I think, more to the small things.
It's true. I've started meditating and I feel like through meditation, I'm more in the present. Like, it's funny, I don't even like planning. I used to be such a big planner and now I can't get myself to plan what I want to plan. I'm such a last minute person. But I feel like it's good because I feel like I'm in the moment. I used to live for the future a lot and now I feel like I'm just living in what does this hour bring of life?
Yes.
The next hour.
Yes. And it's what you seed and water now is what's going to grow in the next moment. But if we're always looking to the next moment, what are we seeding? What are we nurturing? The gift of the present is in the now. So we need to pay attention to the now, because we can project, I would like to achieve this, or I'd like to do that. But if you don't nurture and seed the right seeds today, that isn't ever going to happen.
Or when it does happen, you're just like, okay, whatever, because you're thinking about the next thing after.
Yeah. Or is this it? I thought I ordered something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes I get like that too, but I also, that's also something else I journal. I try to give myself a little like, what do you say? Like gratitude for that. Like, oh, you did a great job. Like I talk to myself in third person in my journal.
Yes.
Like, and I just give myself like positive reinforcement. Like, oh, you did an amazing job, to like really reinforce that. Cause I'm very easy to brush things off and be like, yeah, that was nothing.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of strength for me to like present in public, for example. And I'm really shy. So one time I did it at work and I was like, no, don't downplay that. Like that took a lot of you.
Yeah. I'm always saying to people, some people say you've got rid of the trauma now, don't look back. I disagree. Again, the people through 10 years of doing this, some of the people I've interviewed, their stories are horrific of what's happened to them, but they went through the process of healing, and who they are today, they're an inspiration and an illumination for others. But I say, do look back, and look back just to see how far you've come. Of how much ability you've learned about yourself, how more courageous you've become, how stronger you are. And sometimes it's not looking bad. You can shudder. You can look back and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? And I am so glad I am where I am today. But I think it's a real moral, a real booster to our whole psyche to look back and realize, hey, I've come a long way.
Yeah, because I'm sure if you look back and in that moment you were like, how am I going to make it out of this? And you forget because you're out of it. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. And I think it's a great way of propelling forward. You know, like if I've
And
achieved
keeping
that, what else can I
resilient.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yeah, the
exactly.
resilient factors. So, you know, you did you decide to do this all in 3 books, or it's just the one book, you know, wrote itself and then the next one came up?
Well, I wrote the 3 books because I was just saving poetry that I wrote
Mm.
for like 10 years. So then I was like I just kind of divided into different books or different experiences I had, whatever made sense to the storyline. And I haven't, to this day, I don't know what made me want to self, or where I got this idea. I was just like, let's self-publish. And
Right.
then so I pretty much had all the material. Some I had to work on and get into the moment of, what I was experiencing at the time to kind of finish it.
Mm.
But for the most part, I had most like 80% of my poems done for the books,
So
all three of them.
then it was just kind of putting everything in the right place in the right order. Mhm. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
I'm in that situation right now. Um, Again, I've had all the outside chatter of how you should do things, and then the inner voices. Will you just shut that all out and just listen? You know, if nobody reads it, nobody reads it. Who cares? You know,
Mm-hmm.
it is about. And that's the thing, you know, I always say to people like me with podcasts, you want to be a podcast. If you think you're doing it for money and fame, you know, it's
Yeah.
hard work. And
Mm-hmm.
there are extremely few people that, you know, have famous podcasts, and they were generally famous beforehand. So you've got to know why you're doing it. And if you're doing it because you want to share your expression with the world, basically, as I say with a podcast, when it's out there, it's out of my control. It's out of my control who listens, who watches, and who it affects. I have no control over that. All I'm doing is giving the material. And it's the same with you with the books. You have no control of how it affects people, right? And it'd be great if people can respond to you and let them know how it affects you. But at the same time, it's almost like your baby's grown up and out there in the world, and you'll get a postcard
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the line.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is you don't know where it goes, you don't know
Mm,
who's reading it, you don't know what effect
yeah.
it's had, but I'm sure it does. Like I'm sure
Mm.
if I've touched one person or inspired one person, then honestly I've done my job.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, again, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to be the next Harry Potter or this or that. You know, it's many of the authors. She had masses of amount of rejections before she had, you know, and again, right timing to the right person. And many other authors had rejections before they got accepted. And that's the beauty of you know, doing it yourself, is that you can put it out there. And it's, again, those that are going to pick it up are those that are needing to hear the message at that time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just did it more for me, and I do it because
Mm.
I just love doing it. So if
Right.
somebody else reads it, honestly, it's just a bonus for me
Yes.
because I'm doing what I love.
I think the most important thing in life is that to have an open heart. And when we've been through any form of trauma or upset in life, one of the things we do is we shut our heart down. I don't want to get hurt. I'm going to protect my heart. My heart. I'm going to put a shield around it. I'm going to close it down. But then we lose all reason for living, because with an open heart, we see all the possibilities, all the opportunities, all the beauty, all the reasons to live. And yes, sometimes it can be painful, but we've got to understand, you know, the pain is a part of it. I've birthed 3 children, and the pregnancies were horrible and the birthing was even a bigger nightmare. But the moment that child is put in your arms, everything is worth it. And I think we've got to understand not all pains are bad. They are growing pains. And if we are willing to go through that, the gift of what you're given afterwards, which very often is your own self-discovery, you are a gift to yourself. It is worth every bit of labor pain that you went through.
Mm-hmm. And they always say that moms like forget the pain. Like when you ask them, they're like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't that bad." And then
Well, I told people I, you know, was having a third one. They said, "Do you not remember the last one?" And I literally went into a coma. You know, you
oh
did
my.
forceps broke, bringing him out. I mean, you name it. I went through the whole nightmare with him, and we do forget because of this beautiful joy in our arms, and we concentrate on the gift we have before us. So why can we not see the gift of ourselves that we hold in our own arms?
That's such a good point.
But there again, the willingness, right? The willingness, your expression is through poetry. And you've had the 10 years of poetry that you've put together that is an expression of your own life's journey. And you've put it in a way of telling the story through relationships and through, discovery of yourself. And I'm sure there's a great deal more in there to come out in other books. But this is the thing, is we're constantly looking at what's different about each other. But when we read something, what somebody else has gone through, we realize, oh my God, that could be me. And we realize how much we are all the same, and that we all go through pain and we all go through suffering, but we can all find our path to joy, to self-purpose, to a love of life, if we're willing to take that journey. And I think we are the answer to each other if we're willing to read and be inspired and allow ourselves to take that journey.
Yeah, I actually had a friend who was going through the same kind of experience that I was at the time, and we just helped each other. And it was because sometimes when we had like bad moments, we would call each other and be like, "Oh, I'm feeling like this," and we had each other to relate to, because sometimes you feel like, "Oh, is this normal? Like, should it still be hurting me like this?" And then so it's good when you have somebody to talk to and relate to, because in some moments, honestly, I felt really alone.
Yes.
With certain things, I felt like, oh, I'm the only one going through this, which is not true, obviously.
No, definitely not. But it does feel like that at the time. And I'm one of those people that I'm generally the phone call when somebody needs something. So I am the strength for them. So when I would actually say to them, I am going through this, it washed over them. Part of it, oh no, I can't. I don't know what to say to you because you're always saying it to me. And the other part is, no, I want to see you as perfect and not going through pain yourself, because then it has a different illusion on them. I'm not quite sure why, but it is, we've got to be willing to understand the people that we think are the happiest are just hiding the pain that they're in. They've just learned. But we see that with celebs and things like that now, right? Where they, like Shawn Mendes on his tour. I'm sorry, I can't do this. My mental health won't allow me right now. Yeah. And I went to see the Elvis movie yesterday, and the abuse of Elvis, of using him up and spitting him out just for somebody else's addiction, to keep him in his addiction, was very much the industry and can still happen. But I think we're becoming more and more aware that if we nurture and allow people to have their own mental health time, their own time to go through the process, they come back more enriched, that then benefits all of us and gives all of us that permission to go on that enriching journey ourselves.
I agree. There's always that little voice whispering. I always heard that little voice, and I just say, no, like whatever.
La 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 la.
Yeah. And then I just had I think it was like 2020. I was like, I'm gonna listen to everything that inner voice tells me to do. And I just started, and I feel like my intuition grew, and like it's always right. It's like so crazy.
But do you also find that sometimes negative thoughts come up and they flash in there, and you go, hang on, are you my negative thought, or am I just picking up somebody else's negative thought?
And I always ask questions like, is this fear? Like I feel it out. Is it fear, or do I legitimately think that this is going to happen? And it is hard to kind of decipher like which one it is. When it's negative, I find it's hard. But I just try. I'll just be like, I always say like, and I got this from somebody I follow, but not in my timeline. I say not in my timeline, like if this is meant for me, and not in my timeline. I don't want this to happen.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot. But very often it could be a past voice trying to come back. And it's like, don't just shut it out, face it. Why are you here? Why are you saying this? What's going on right now that you feel you have a voice? Because if you don't address it, it's going to come back even bigger.
I know, but I do it because I feel like what you think about, you attract.
Yes.
So I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that in my life. I don't attract this.
It's putting it in its place, right?
Yeah,
which is what we need to
exactly.
do, put things in the right place. And, there is the demographic that you must only always think positive and, you know, and good thoughts and everything. But you know what? There is evil in the world. There are bad things in the world. People do bad things to themselves and to each other. We do have to acknowledge that, because if we don't acknowledge that, we're never going to find a reason to resolve it. And at the age person, some people are literally a bad seed, and that's just past life and DNA generations that's created that. Other people, it is not only their pain in this life, it's their parents' pain, grandparents' pain, and they've lived in it for so long that they don't even know who they are. They've never ever discovered that. We have to acknowledge those various levels, but we can acknowledge it and we can try and help without giving up ourselves, without giving up our own positivity. But we still do have to acknowledge there are bad things in the world, and we also need to know that we're part of the solution by coming together and standing up against that bad. Is it something we can heal? Or is it something we have to face as a nation or as a people?
Yeah, you have to embrace the negative and the
Mm.
positive. Like
Yes,
I
yin yang. Mm-hmm.
exactly. You can't have one without the other.
No, it's night and day, right?
Mhm.
What would night be without the day? It's the contrast. And it's like you can wake up in a bad mood and have no idea why. And then, okay, give yourself a hug. Maybe this is just you need to give yourself some love right now, or ask for a hug. All right. And face it. But I find that very often, if we ignore something, it gets bigger. And I think it's better just sometimes to face it, have a conversation with it, and understand why it's there, and then put it in its place,
Yeah,
wherever that place is.
honestly, I just allow if wake up in a bad mood, I'm just like, okay, I'm in a bad mood. I just accept it and just go on with my day.
Right, it's get your grumpies out. All right,
Yeah,
get your grumpies
exactly.
out, have a good bitch, and then okay, all right, now enough of that.
Yeah. Eventually it just fades, or like,
Yeah,
you get to work and it's fine, or you just need to have coffee.
right. Or change the environment. Put
Yeah.
on a podcast or music or something that that's going to reset you. And we were talking about this in the last writing show, of how why are we so drawn to certain singers? And Adele, I mean, she's made her fame over breakup songs and pain songs. Now she's happy. They say, what's the next album going to be like? Because everything, she's too happy. But why was she so popular? Because she was speaking of our pain. We reflected in that, and she spoke it for us, and which allowed us to feel it and see it. And but those words had to be written before they were sung, right?
Mhm.
So poetry, because it's rhythmical, is a form of song, isn't it?
That's true, because sometimes people, like, they know they feel, but they don't know how they feel. So I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes when you read it, you're like, oh, okay,
Yes.
I feel that. That's
Yes.
how I feel.
Yeah. And that's sometimes we just don't understand what's going on with ourselves until we read something or we hear something, and then it becomes, okay, now it
Yeah,
makes sense.
resonates with
Right.
us. Yeah.
Now, and what are we trying to do? We're trying to make sense out of our lives.
Because I don't, what, in the moment, I didn't always know what was going. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say sometimes I never knew what was going on until I had the time to really sit and reflect, and that took a long time, but I got there.
Yes. But the big magical word there is time. You were willing to give it time to go through whatever process, be it therapy, be it writing, be it taking the time just to sit and observe. We have to find that something that allows us to spend the emotion and give it the time it needs to heal. If you're not willing to give it time and you're not willing to apply whatever process you need to do to heal and go through it, it will always be with you.
And I believe you have to take responsibility for it, because if you
Yes.
blame somebody, you don't look at yourself and what you
No.
did. So once I took, at least in my situation, once I took responsibility for it, I got over it, because I was giving the other person power over
Yes.
me. And
Yes.
when I had the power, you know, the whole time.
Yes. You know, I always say, you know, I had a tumultuous marriage, and he actually admits that he never should have married, that he was a bad husband. Finally admitted that some 20 something years later, after we had separated, a divorce. But it was, I had to take ownership that, yeah, he kind of kicked me verbally. You know, he was a browbeater, but I gave him the boots sometimes to do it. Right. So, you know, he has to own the kicking me, but I have to own that sometimes I became the martyr or the low self-esteem, or gave him the boots in which to do it through. We were both, you know, responsible, and we just had to realize we were both incredibly toxic for each other. So why were we drawn to that toxicity? Right. So we focus in on the relationship. Why? But why were we drawn to it? And if we can go to that route, then we can go, oh, okay, I'm going to make sure I never do that again.
Yeah. And that requires like you to look at yourself.
Yes.
Which is, it's hard to do. It's so hard to do.
And
Because you
we
have to
may not
admit to
always
your
like
own
it.
faults.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was not easy, but
that doesn't mean you don't love yourself. We are going to make mistakes in life, and some of those are going to be, you know, real dingers. And it's like, forgive yourself, because you reacted with what you knew at the time. Even if you did something in malice, you were feeling that you needed to do something because you felt that you were being attacked and you wanted to attack first. All of those reactions are a defense or a protection of ourselves. Why did we feel we had to be that way? So instead of beating yourself up for what we did and go, oh my God, I mean, we can go, oh my God, what were we thinking? But don't persecute yourself for it. Be willing to actually understand what was the root cause of it. And that means you have to be willing to go through the process and give it time to reveal.
That's why I try not to judge people, because I feel like unless you walked in their shoes, their circumstances, their life, you really don't know what you would do in that situation. You might have done worse or better, but you don't know because you didn't live their life. So I remember that when I'm kind of being judgmental in my head.
And that judgment of other people is very often that judgment back on self, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Which also helps with my own judgment on myself. I am a little hard on myself too.
Well, yeah, lighten up, girl, lighten up. That's the next one. You know, I mean, God, you know, as I write my book, and it's like, I look at things and go, do I want to put that in? You know, and it's like, be vulnerable. And I think understanding that vulnerability, if I am strong in the core of who I am, I can be vulnerable without feeling I'm laying myself open for attack, right? Because basically I'm owning myself and all my flawsomeness, which I love that word, flawsome. We are all flawed, but we can be awesome. You know, when we recognize what those flaws are, and just know that that's a part of us, and we're going to be more cognitive of it. But if we're looking for perfection, we are going to let ourselves down every time. And, you know, we always have to work on things, don't we? You know, but people think, oh, well, then if I have to work at something all the time, it sounds so hard. I may as well just stay in my misery. But it's not like that, is it? It's not like I've got to work on it daily. It's just that you have daily practices that you know that are going to keep you on track.
And it makes your life better. I have things I work on all the time. I give myself things to work on just so it improves my life quality, because I used to be really negative and now I just focus on positive things. With being true to myself, obviously, when I'm feeling sad, I'm always
right.
I can't hide. If I'm sad, I can't hide that.
No.
and I will not.
No. You know, that's why sometimes I cry at commercials. Sometimes it just has to come out and I'll find a different way. But I mean, you're putting it down in your poetry and sharing it in these books. You're sharing your vulnerability. You're sharing your mistakes. You're sharing, you know, where you went wrong, but how you recognize that and how you honored yourself and healing yourself to find a path where you can be really content with who you are now.
Mhm. You know what? It's funny. One of my friends was like, "Oh, you were really vulnerable." And when I published it, I didn't feel like that. I don't know. It's
Mm,
just like, this is just me. Like, if somebody like resonates with it or reads it and goes through the same thing, like that makes me feel better too, because then I know it wasn't just me going through this
right.
circus.
Yes. Yeah. Um, that's the beauty of it. You wrote it in your honesty, in your authenticity, in your own vulnerability, but you didn't perceive it as that. But other
Mhm.
people are perceiving it as that. And that means that that vulnerability has opened up the door for them to be honest and vulnerable with themselves.
Mhm. Well, I guess that's what I wrote the book for, to inspire other people. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all that I hope to do while doing what I like, enjoy.
So all three books came out quite quickly,
Mm-hmm.
one after the other. I want to make sure I had them in the right order. So you have, so I've got it here on the small print.
No
So
problem.
The Last
Lose Me
Kiss,
came out
right?
first, and then I think it was A Love Like Ours, and
Mm-hmm.
then it was Last Kiss.
Mm. And is it a sequence of the same relationship, or is it just a sequence of a relationship in discovering yourself?
I would say it's sequences of discovering myself. I think well, not A Love Like Ours. A Love Like Ours is more just kind of a poetry book about love. The other two are just more like experiences that shaped who I am today. And they're
Mm.
kind of more sad, but like I try to put a lesson in the end
Mhm.
to kind of put a positive spin on it, or at least what I took away from those experiences.
We're not going to go through life without sadness or pain, um, but we can make it something beautiful if we're willing to look that out of everything comes something beautiful. And if we know that, like this too will pass, it's a new day tomorrow. If we're willing to change our perspective, and even if it's still, I mean, you look at Ukraine right now. Every day they're fighting for survival, and they're fighting a coward, and they're fighting an unfair battle. And it's that, I'm sure it's wavered, the tenacity. But when you look at the prime minister there, he is he has stepped up to rallying for his people, and that he goes through the anguish every day. And it's like those become our heroes, the people that we know are facing adversity, but they choose. They choose to put a smile in the face, or they choose to stand up for other people or themselves. They've chosen the light in life instead of giving into the darkness.
It's so easy, I feel like, even for me to fall into the darkness, because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a place that I know, and I think
Yes.
I wrote that in one of my books.
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy to just slip and fall, but and sometimes I let myself stay there. I'm just like, okay, I'm not in a good mood, but I do make sure to get myself out. And usually it happens naturally now. It
Yes.
just I'll bounce back in a couple of
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. And the thing is, again, if you put yourself in the right environment that is going to bounce you back, then it'll happen
Mhm,
organically. I
mhm.
ended up 8 years in that dark space, and I could see the light, and I wanted to come out into the light. I just didn't know how. And then when I came out into the light, I was blinded by the light, and I felt the shadows chasing me. And then it got to a point where I became comfortable with the light, and there were no more shadows. Instead, there was shade and light
Oh.
instead of shadows.
Oh, you gotta put that one in your book.
But it was a process, and it was one that I literally had to shut down other people and say, I can't be here to help you. I am going in, and I have to do this for me. Forgive me if I'm not there for you, because I have people phone me all my life, and I can't pick up the phone for you right now. I have to put what care I put on you, I have to put on myself. And we have to get a little selfish, don't we?
Yeah, I feel like I had my moments too where I just couldn't, like, because you're trying to change, and then
Mm,
you have these things that are kind of pulling you back to the old you,
yeah.
and you have to be, you're not in a strong kind of place yet. You're still figuring yourself
Yes.
out. So you can't help other people. I definitely went through that myself as well.
No, I used to, in my counseling, used to talk about a ruler, 12 inches. Yes, I'm an old fart, folks, not matrix. But, talking about the 6 to 12 are the various levels of positive people. And the 4 5s are the people that are coming out of that darkness and stepping into a more positive life. But you have your 1, 2, 3s that are your piranhas. They're the victim junkies, the misery junkies. You're not going to be happy if I'm miserable. And they take advantage of the 4 5s because they're coming into that light, but they're not quite there yet. And if they're around the wrong people, those people can suck the life right back out of them again. And this is why it's rather imperative you are going through that journey of recovery to isolate yourself from people who are the piranhas, because otherwise they will suck the life out of you. Misery loves company, and they want to make sure that you are that company.
Yeah, I definitely had that time too where I just spent I didn't want to be around people. Because I feel like I was so like when you're undoing yourself, you're so fragile that you don't want to be around people, like good or bad. I just stayed home by myself for a little bit.
Is that where the Love Me book came in, when you stepped into your love for yourself?
Well, it happened around that time, but I think I just imagined my soulmate. Like it was kind of like almost manifesting what kind of relationship I wanted, I would say, because I thought like, okay, I didn't have a soulmate. So I was like, what do I want this person to be? How would I feel like? And I feel like that's what inspired poetry for that book. Because all my other books are sad. Usually I write sad things. So that one is actually positive.
Good. Well, I'm always thinking that, God's canvas, whatever you wish to believe in, we have the paintbrush, we have the blank canvas. We've got to be careful what we draw. We've got to be careful what we paint, because the universe is going to meet you at your frequency. The universe is going to give you what you paint. So if you're going to paint the misery, it's going to give it to you. But if you paint, the love that you want to feel, the partnerships that you want to have, the person you want to be, then the universe will match that energy. And it's just a question of us turning our own frequency up, so that we actually do get the things that benefit us rather than keep pushing us back.
I think I had a phase where I was trying to like kind of increase my frequency, but I feel like, and things were coming at me, but I wasn't ready to accept them. And I had to get to a point where it's like, it's okay to accept it. Like you deserve it. It's like, I didn't feel worthy, even though I wanted it, but I didn't feel worthy to accept it. And I had to get to the place where like, it's okay. It's okay to have, like, to want this and to have it. It's okay.
Yeah. And that Love Me is that projection of, somebody who's going to compliment you, right? Because you're not looking for completion. You're looking for someone who accepts you for who you are, but that compliments you and brings out the essence of you even more.
And they accept you as you are, and nurture you, especially like through your bad times. I feel like to me, that's the most important, because that's when you need love.
They recognize the strength of your individuality, but that individual strength is the essence of you. So when you come together and those two essences meet and create the us, that us is so strong. But if the us is, if you're needy as an individual, you're going to bring that neediness to the relationship, and that's going to start dismantling it and having it break away.
Yeah, I think that's how I felt, and what inspired like Lose Me, because I was very, I feel like needy, codependent, which wasn't a great, and that's what made me like not a great partner, because you have to have some sort of independence. Like, yeah, it's great to rely on that person, but not for every single thing that you feel. You have to be accountable for the way you feel too, at the end of the day.
I think if we could take ourselves proverbially and put ourselves on a desert island and say, this is you now. Every choice you make is up to you. You can't blame anyone else. Can't blame the island. This is your choice of what you make out of it. And if we could all step into that, again, we would realize we're so much more than we allow ourselves to be. And we'll step into our own beautiful strength essence of who and why we are. And that's when you then bring yourself back into the public arena, into the dating arena, because people are that are going to match that essence are going to see that essence in you. They're going to recognize you as somebody being on the same wavelength and the same kin. So we, never look for someone to complete you. Be completed, but look for someone to complement you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important, and that's what I'm looking for.
And somebody who will celebrate you for who you are and all your quirks and flawosomeness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, nobody has perfection, we all have that, but it's we have to look at each other's flaws and go, can I live with that? And if it's something, like, God, they leave the toilet seat up and it's going to annoy me for the rest of my life, then it will. It will, and it will become the reason for divorce. But if it's like, so what? I'll just put the seat down, it doesn't bother me, and realize it's a quirk, and don't let it bother you, then we get through things and we understand there's always going to be something that's going to be a little quirk or a little irritant. But if you don't feed the irritant, it's not going to get so irritating every time.
I think it's when the good outweighs the bad,
yes,
then you can justify it, right? But
yes,
I think when you have too many bad moments, then I don't think you're in a good relationship personally. But
no,
because I've been there,
been there, done that, exactly. Like, not to be repeated. This is there's going to be no sequel.
Exactly. No sequel to my books.
So what book is to come next?
I'm writing a book through my experiences in dating and what I learned through that, because I did like kind of repeat some mistakes there. So I'm going to publish that. I'm also writing a book, a self-help journal book. I kind of write and then I end up with like 3 different books that I kind of have to divide my poetry into whichever one relates to that. And I'm also writing another one about like my mom and my grandma and generational trauma and how like kind of we've all like connected through that, and that one's like still a work in progress.
And that's what I call the DNA trauma, is a lot of our problems is the societal upbringing and dictation. Society demands you be this, you be that, and you can only be happy if you have this. But we don't realize the DNA trauma is the trauma that your mother went through or your grandmother went through is actually in your blood. It is in your psyche. And this is why sometimes we have to look at and go, this anxiety or this feeling, is it really mine? Or is it something I've inherited?
Yeah, you have to question everything, all your thoughts, because you don't know where they came from or who they came from or when they came from. It could have come from your childhood, and you really have to undo that. Especially, I think about it for my future daughter. Like I'm healing her, and then hopefully I can't heal everything because there's a lot.
Nope. And they're not meant to. This is to say, by healing yourself, you become the healer for that next generation and for the people around you. It's very, very important. I'm going through the healing process, after marriage, after 20 years, and my kids were older, and they've kind of gone through some of their own trauma of that marriage. But they're now in their 30s, one's approaching 40 this year, and have come to terms with their own life and who they are and what they are in it. They've taken that journey. For me, I wish I'd done it earlier, because I always thought, no, it's just me. I can just sacrifice me as long as the kids are all right. And then the kids are saying, for God's sake, divorce. This is too traumatic for everyone. And you don't realize how much is affecting them. And whether it's happening subliminally or openly, it has an effect on the children, and it's in their psyche, becomes part of their self-worth. It becomes part of their dialogue without them even realizing what the question, what the conversation is. And so, yes, I think it's a really good one that you're looking at that, because that's the DNA relationship and how much that has had an effect on you.
And I feel like no matter if you're a good parent, bad parent, like there's always going to be some kind of trauma you've given to your children. I don't know. From what I see, that's what it seems.
Because you're doing what you know in that moment, and you look back and go, oh God, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that. But at the time, it is where you were at and what you knew. And it's like, if an apology is warranted, give that apology, but at the same time, don't persecute yourself. And sometimes a kid will persecute you, and it's like, if you're open to a conversation of why that happened, we can both heal from it. But if they're not willing to do so, there's nothing you can do about it until they have chosen to be ready.
I feel like that goes for anybody. You can only, as we've said, like, you can only heal yourself, and you're the only one that can do the work.
Yes. Yeah. And the work you're doing is through your poetry. You're just letting it out. And I like the fact that, because that's actually how I'm writing my book, is just article blogging as things come to memory. Because, I'm turning 68. I've got a lot of things to remember and some things I don't want to, but they're going to come up as they come up. So for me, I am just writing, and then I will put in order afterwards of how it should go. But again, it's like stepping out of, well, you need to do it this way. No, I need to do it the way that's coming out of me. And it's like, let the puzzle pieces come onto the floor, and then pick everything up and put it into a bigger picture afterwards. So you're doing the same with your poetry, just letting it come out, then you're sorted out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I find that that's the best way. I find, because I have all the pieces there, and then I can figure it out instead of figuring out. Because sometimes, even if you have the end, you can write the beginning. Like, you're right. Like, everyone can do it their own way. And instead of, they think that, I need the title first, or I need the first chapter. And it's like, I always say, just write what you have. Just start, or else you'll never start if you want to make it perfect.
I mean, what's your title? I said, I don't know. A dozen titles keep coming into mind, and it will be at the end of it, the title will speak to me. Right?
Exactly. Maybe when you're finished, the title will come to you at that time.
Yes. I mean, there's one that constantly keeps tapping me on the shoulder, and it's like, okay, if your voice is strong enough at the end of this and it feels right, then it will be. But until then, I'm just going to worry about the content. And again, not writing it for anyone else, writing it for me. Although I put on my own show every week, and I put out that I'm closing down for summer to write my memoir, and I want to read it. And I'm like, oh God, I really got to write it now. Did you actually have that kind of, oh my God, here's the book, people are going to actually read it? Did you have that?
Really? I feel like I didn't overthink it, but I did send it to some friends. I actually sent it all in one, all the poetry that I wrote in one book. And then they gave me some feedback, and they kind of like helped edit it. And then I was like, this doesn't make sense, because it's all different places in my life. So it doesn't make sense. So I feel like, I don't know, I didn't overthink it, even though I should. I feel like I should have.
No, again, it's what makes sense to you, right? What makes sense to you, because as you said, you've put everything in there, but that can be too much. Again, poetry and the way I'm writing it as an article writer, the short and sweet, we have that, that gift of being able to rearrange things, because we're not writing a novel that requires fluidity leading into the next chapter. The way we're writing is that we can express, we can put it out there. And yes, there's a formation where you want to have the flow, but it means somebody can pick up that book and open up at any page, and it doesn't affect the book.
Exactly. And that's what I like, that style of writing. And that's what I like reading too, because you'll lose me if you're just dragging the story on.
Right, exactly. I agree.
But that's my personality. I'm just very like, let's get to the point. What is this about?
Yeah, I mean, when I read a good novel, or I read something that's, that keeps me in flow, that's great. But very often, and I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of books from people I've interviewed here. Sometimes I'll just pick up a book and go, what do I need to know today? And open up. And there will be something, a paragraph, a page, or a chapter. That is what I needed to know today. And it's so apropos. And I like that. I like those kind of messages,
I like that spontaneity in my life too. Like, just go with the flow.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with it not being perfect. I've accepted that in my life.
Awesome. Yes. Exactly. And perfect by whose standard? because what's perfection to one isn't to the other. So it's more about your truth, your vulnerability. This is your story that you are sharing in the form of poetry. Only you know that story. Only you know how you feel. That is what you're sharing. And those that resonate with it, that hear it, that feel it, will get it. And if others don't, then they're not on the same wavelength, or they're not ready to hear that story, or it's just not their format in which to hear that story. And that's okay too.
I just got to a point where I was like, I can't please everybody,
Right.
but I might as well make myself happy.
Yes. Yes. And that is the important thing, because when you're happy and that essence of that joy, that comes off the page, right? If it's like, oh, should I write this? Or is this word the right word, or this or that? Then it's like, who are you doing it for? Who are you expressing for? But when people are reading it and they know it's your voice, it's how you feel, they'll feel it too. And we must never underestimate that, you know, how much our words can have an impact, and people can tap into that feeling, sad or happy. You know, that's that responsibility that we put out there. But it must be your truth. You see all the talent shows, people's coming in, sing perfectly, do a perfect that, but without the feeling or that connection with the audience, it doesn't matter how good they are. There's no connection. People want connection.
And they want like authenticity,
Yes.
like someone who's genuine. And I feel like in me being genuine, I feel like I bring genuine people out, you know, because people feel safe to be themselves around me. And I noticed that because people always say that to me.
Yes, yeah.
Which I love and I appreciate. I'm like, I'm just being myself. Like,
yes.
What are you talking?
When you're at home with you, you've set the stage. You have other people to be at home with you as well, right? If you're on guard, then what are we on guard about? What have we got to be careful about? But when you're relaxed and welcoming, and then they feel they can be themselves in your presence.
Which I think is the greatest gift you could give somebody.
And a huge compliment, a huge compliment. So you're clearly on the right path, love.
I'm trying. I'm still a work in progress. I don't want to portray myself as like this perfect person that has it figured out.
Remember, there is no perfection. And you're going to be a work in process to the day you die, because that's what life is about. Constant growth, constant learning, and a constant evolving. You know, the people, the one-hit wonders, that maybe that's all they needed to share. But for other people, it's each story or each thing that they do grows on each other. And they become that bigger story that really more and more people get intertwined with, and that you're speaking for and about. Setting themselves free. So just keep on writing. Just keep it going.
I definitely will. I'll keep being vulnerable and just letting it all out there.
The greatest gift you can give to anyone in life is your vulnerability with trust. And the trust is, again, what people do with your poetry is up to them. It's out of your hands. But knowing that you've put it out in honest vulnerability, in authenticity, that truth is what's felt. Whether somebody resonates with it or not, that's up to them, where they are in their life. But when people do resonate with it, they know it's your truth.
And if they don't like it, it's not my problem.
No, it isn't. It isn't. You know, it's actually got nothing to do with us of how they receive it. And that's a hard one for an artist to do, but really nothing to do with us. All we do is put out, and how people receive it and what they do with it is up to them.
I prepared myself. I mentally prepared myself when I published. I was like, you know, not everybody's going to like your book, and it's okay. Like, you just have to be okay with it, because you can't make everybody happy. I really mentally prepared myself for it.
I already know the people who are going to criticize. I know who they are. But it's like, it's not for them. Right? This is, people have asked me for my book, and I'm putting it out as a sorrow. And again, if you can't read it in that way, then don't pick it up. Right? That's the thing.
Not meant for you.
Not meant for you. Right? And that's, again, okay. And you know, one of the biggest critics and the people that are least likely to understand are the people that are closest to you, family members and people very, very close to you. They're the ones that don't always get it, and don't feel that they don't love you, or they don't understand, they just don't get where you're at and that frequency. And that's because they're not matching frequency, but you're channeling with them on a different level, right? Doesn't mean they love you less, they just don't get where you're at that time, right?
Exactly. I didn't tell my mom or dad when I published my book. I only told them like months after. And then my dad was like, oh, I want to read it. And I was like, okay.
And what was the feedback?
He was like, "Well," because he, as a parent, they knew what I was going through, but
Right.
they didn't know the extent of it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what my dad said. He was like, "I didn't like you never shared how you were feeling. I had to learn through reading."
Yes. But that's good, because you couldn't express it verbally, but you've expressed it, through your writing, and now they have a better understanding, which means they have more compassion and more empathy. And, sometimes that in itself is a wonderful gift, right? If only that, right? So again,
realize that, but you're right.
yeah. It's that they have a better understanding. And again, it's, you do it for you, and you put it out in good vibrations, and all of those that are ready to receive it, that can benefit from it, will. Those that aren't, won't. And you'll always have a critic. Always. There's always critics out there, but you can't do anything about that. That's, there are a lot of people who just like to be bitchy.
I know, and I don't take it personally. I haven't read anything bad, knock on wood. Maybe I just ignore them.
Yes.
I just don't even read it, but so far I've only had good positive.
Right. Exactly. And critiquing is productive. Criticism isn't. And they're two different things, right? So, and that's something, and there's a way to critique. And if you don't do it right, then it becomes criticism. But again, that's a projection of you. If it becomes criticism, not of you, the author.
Yeah, right? And that's why I try not to take, like I said, I don't take things personally that people say.
Exactly.
I take it, I'm like, is it true? Is it true or not? Do I feel like, is that right or not to me? And then, I might go back to it and think, okay, yeah, they were right. But if it has to feel good to me, and I have to accept it at the time.
Exactly. And if we can just all go through life knowing that the only person that you really need to please, and again, I don't mean the narcissistic that we see in certain people in the world, but please you, that you could step into your truth and authenticity, and then those that see that and benefit from it, those that don't, and that's all you need to do. Exactly. So how do people get hold of you? What is your site, and where do people find your books, love?
My website is mdswrites.com. And I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and my handle is mds.writes. And all my books are on Amazon worldwide.
Right,
all
exactly.
3 of them.
And, it's just keep on writing, just keep on sharing, because that's what it's about. And, MD Writes, folks, if you're just listening, it's literally just mdswrites.com. And, pick up the books, see how they feel. And don't forget sharing. I'm always a great one of, book clubs and podcast clubs, people listening, sharing their perspective, because that's how we grow. And if you've read the books and, this is how it's made you feel, and that's the feedback, please share, because that's important. Comments are always important. If you just want to be bitchy for bitchy's sake, keep it to yourself. No one's interested. But if, you really want to make a comment on how something changed your perspective in life, made you look at something different within yourself, hallelujah, because that is a benefit that serves everyone. Thanks so much for sharing with us here today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
My pleasure. And, keep on writing. You have no idea how it's going to affect people's lives. And, maybe the 5th, 6th, or 7th book when, suddenly people realize, wow, I want to read all of them. But it is, again, you're writing for you, and you're putting it out for you and for those that resonate with it. And that's, again, all one can do, but just keep honoring your voice, because it needs to come out. Okay.
You too.
Until next time, folks, remember, your things, you don't need the publisher, you don't need, everything to be perfect. If you've got a book inside of you, if you've got a voice inside of you, if you need to write, let it out. You can sort it out later, but let it out, because that voice that's inside of you becomes therapeutic for you, becomes something that helps you through your life's journey, and you have no idea what impact it's going to have on somebody else's journey in life as well. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations, or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.